Hello, Kevlin. I've been asked to interview you about your new book, 97 Things Every Java Programmer Should Know. And it's a pleasure to have you here with me, although it's just online, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here again online. We seem to have the same weather, roughly,
Yeah.
judging by. Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit dull, very summerly in Denmark as it is in England.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's compatible weather. Yeah.
But you can see actually it's weather for giraffes in Denmark, so it's not that bad.
Oh, that's not too bad. We've got a kangaroo in the other room. It's an inflatable kangaroo.
Yeah.
From a previous YOW, I will actually say, I brought that one back, and it's now pride of places to make the house look a bit different. A younger son decided to inflate it. So yes, we have a kangaroo in our living room.
You're going to speak at YOW, but unfortunately online, so you won't be able to buy another kangaroo.
But I'm fully stocked on kangaroos, so that's fortunate.
Okay, that's good actually. So I was wondering, I'm guessing that looking at your new book, it looks really fancy, I must say. But the question on everybody's lips, I guess, is why now? Isn't it like 20 years too late? Shouldn't you have done this years ago?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, because I did have the idea. So the 97 Things Every Java Programmer Should Know book that's co-edited me and Trisha G. I had the idea years ago that it would be good to have a follow-up to some of the other 97 Things books that were around about 10 years ago. And in conversation with O'Reilly, we tried to settle on, well, do we pick on a paradigm? Do we pick on a platform? And eventually we settled on the idea of why don't we do one on Java? Because I thought, first of all, I'm comfortable in that space, but there's the idea that it's a relatively enduring space. It has a very deep track record. So
what you're saying, it's an old programming language, right?
It is an old programming language. In fact, there is one piece by Ben Evans that basically saying Java is a 90s kid. And it is, so it grew up in a post-grunge era, and it has all the trappings that you'd expect of a 90s kid, so it's kind of just on the edge of the kind of millennial boundary. And it's had its adolescence, and now it's trying to get a job. In fact, it has a job. This is the thing. It's for some people, Java is still Java and broadly the JVM, because we wanted to make sure, although there is a bias towards the language, we wanted to open up and say, look, there's a whole load of stuff happening on the JVM. It has an ecosystem that goes from the tooling all the way through to the optimization. It's used in a variety of locations, way beyond its original vision. And you have this kind of plethora of languages, some of which are a little more ultra than others. Clojure is a very, when everybody else is talking functional programming, they have a very particular model in mind. And then Clojure goes back to this kind of like old school Lisp, but actually with modern sensibilities kind of approach, and integrates some of the more recent work. You've got a lot going on there. It's a standard language at university. It's also a standard going back to work language. There's a lot of Java code out there. There's a lot of Java code being developed. So the polite way of putting it is, you could say it's old, but it's also kind of, it's reached maturity, it's consolidated. It's not about to evaporate. It's actually quite long-standing. But we also then face the challenge that most people who are Java programmers have been so for less than a year, possibly even less than 6 months. So for people who have gone through the language since it was there originally and have seen the platform evolve, and perhaps moved off because like, well, I've done Java, that's one point of view. But for most people, it's new. They do not have that background. Most of the people who are programming it have used it for less than a year. The fact that it has a 25-year track record is irrelevant to them, or except that it can make it harder to learn. Because every time you look at a piece of Java code or a Java book or a piece of Java advice, you kind of almost have to carbon date it. When is this from? So it's a solid, it's a safe language. We've got a number of pieces in the book on very much exactly that. Why choose Java? Because there are lots more exciting languages and platforms out there. Yeah. But it's everywhere. It's the one thing you can kind of guarantee. I still use it as a lingua franca on slides. If I'm doing something that's programming language neutral, of all the languages that I know, there's a fairly good chance that Java is going to be one of my choices and Python is going to be one of the others. If I have to put a piece of code up that people who are not necessarily deeply familiar with the mechanics of the language that they can read, I'm going to do that. So it's the fact that it is everywhere. The fact that it is not new is actually part of the reason for the book.
And it's readable, and so many other languages have copied it so that they can recognize the Java syntax, I guess. But my next question is, who is the audience of this book? Is it people who've been programming in Java for 20 years, or is it the ones who started a year ago? Is it people who don't know anything about Java?
Everything you said plus more, because you're dealing with, it's a language that has a long history, it has a long legacy tail. And importantly, for people who perhaps did some Java, say 15 years ago and then stopped, then there's a lot's changed. It's a moving target. So what are the things that you might need to know? If you're new to it, what are the things you might need to know? If you are experienced and you've experienced every single point of the evolution, then there's this question of, and I guess this is part of the original vision. So with the original 97 Things Every Programmer Should Know book that I edited 10 years ago, one of the things I thought of was that this should be something that perhaps a senior developer can offer a junior. The senior developer can kind of look at things and go, oh, okay, in one sense I knew this, but perhaps I didn't know how to explain it. Perhaps if somebody who is in a mentoring role or wants to communicate to somebody else, perhaps they don't have the words, perhaps that's not their fault, or perhaps they just want to book bomb somebody and make a point. The idea is like, this one, somebody else says it better than I do.
Yes.
There's that idea. Lunchtime sessions, let's pick an item. So the idea that they're small. So the idea is, it really is very much for, as the title suggests, every Java programmer should know, in that sense that somebody who is experienced and senior will get a different story out of it than somebody who's junior. Somebody who's junior will get some pointers. It's just every
new
item is
things
just a
to
couple
learn
of pages
about.
long. Yeah, it's not a full tutorial, but it's thought-provoking. May present something. So like, oh, okay, I need to read up on that. Somebody who's senior may see something or an insight that was there in plain sight, but there's so much to know in modern software development. You cannot know everything. So when somebody offers it to you in something that is just targeted, it's not a bigger book. It's just a 2-page piece, and you look at that and go, I'd never thought of it like that. I've been working in this environment that way. I've never had the right mental model. Or somebody gives you a link or a tool suggestion. It's just like, oh, didn't know that, and you follow it. All of these. So I think there's something there. Different people will get something different from it, and different levels of experience will find some items more relevant to them than others. But the idea is, there's something there for everyone.
Yeah, makes sense. So for instance, one of your contributions to the book is name the date. I'm guessing that's one of the chapters where seasoned, if I can call that, Java programmers will also get something out of the discussion you have there.
Yes, yeah. So I in that one I talk about our Java util date, which is a very interesting piece of design. It was never really particularly good. It was a bit accidental. Date time representation is always a bit of a challenge, but Java util date made it more challenging. Hey, let's take something hard and make it even harder. Let's ignore all the advice people have ever given up until 1995 on how to design classes and how to do date time handling and how to deal with the problem of generalization and all of this. And we put it all in one place. You can learn so much from that class. Sadly, most of it's from counter example, but you can learn a lot about naming, about abstractions. You can come at it from a domain-driven design point of view. You can come at it from a reliability point of view. In other words, error-prone APIs. It's a classic error-prone API. There's all kinds of things there. But in that, although I'm using Java util date as kind of like the piece of grit to get the pearl out, as it were, it is a bigger, the idea is you can learn a lot through it. So even if you're not experienced there, I mean, it still exists, although it's been mostly deprecated away, but people will encounter it in code. And every now and then, if they go and Google for Java date, they won't be sent in the direction of the nice new time stuff. Actually, there's a really good piece by Kristen Gorman where she covers a lot of the time stuff in more detail. But there's this idea of like, let's just at face value understand how hard it is to create something and how it is to evolve it. So at one level, it's a critique of Java util date. So if you're an old hand, you go like, oh yeah, I've been bitten by that. At the other, it's here's the challenges, here's some of the mistakes that it makes it easier. Hindsight, we can learn from this, and this is what you can do in your own code. So again, people will get a different message from that depending on their depth of experience.
And another message I got from that was a nice reminder of Jane Austen.
Yes, indeed. Yes. What was the bit?
Could you read it out for me?
Now, okay, let's talk about information design. How do you organize 97 things? And there were 97 things books a decade ago, and each one took a very different approach. The 97 things every software architect should know, based everything on order of submission. Well, how does a reader know in what order the items
are? That's very helpful for the users.
That is basically, there's no difference between that and a random number, random allocation. The 97 things every project manager should know tried to alternate things depending on whether somebody was a US or non-US based person. Again, honestly, I might as well be flipping coins. I said there's only one way, unless you have an overarching theme and structure of sections, which was not, we couldn't perceive in this. In other words, I did look for that, but it's just that, no, people are covering so many things, alphabetically ordered, because then you can find it. If you know,
I like that. So can you find your own?
Good grief, there it is, under N, name the date. Yes, there it is. So, yes, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single programmer in possession of the belief they understand date and times must be in want of a code review. I normally try and sneak in the odd literary reference here and there, and I just
it's amazing. And if the people who are listening don't know this Jane Austen quote, they should definitely look it up. If they just if you just type "it's a truth universally acknowledged," then
it will come up. So I put things in there. There's all these little there's all these little things that make it enjoyable for me to write.
Yeah, and for people to read.
And people that are reading it at face value and aren't aware, they're getting something. But for people who are aware, it's probably a little more engaging. There's a humor to this. We must not take too much too seriously.
I like humor.
Yes, indeed. Yes, your sessions are. Always emphasize that.
Always emphasize that. That's right. There was another thing I was wondering about, because when I looked at the book, the scripts about countdown latch and declarative expressions and generational garbage collection. I mean, of course, every Java programmer should know that.
Yeah.
But why technical interviews? Why teams? Why testing? Why do you have to know about GC? Why do you have to know about containers?
Yeah.
Why all these extra things?
Why all these extra things? Yeah, because I think that, and this is something that, this is something I think it's a deeper thing, in the sense that it is very easy to assume that what you're going to get as a Java programmer is just Java related stuff. It is just the technical, it's the machine, it's the language, and here is the very, very focused thing. But that's very inward looking. That's the obvious technical space. And I think many of us recognize that if you want to be an effective developer, there's this other bit. People tend to, I always joke that I have various jokes about full stack. The idea that people often say, oh yeah, I'm a full stack developer, and then you kind of check what they do, and they do a little bit of stuff at the front end, a little bit of stuff at the back end, and they kind of poke the database here and there, and suddenly that's full stack. My background is originally kind of more embedded and real-time systems, and even device drivers, and even way back factory automation. So it goes all the way down to you're hugging the metal. The full stack goes a long way down, and people kind of like, oh yeah, we've got a little bit, I'm doing a bit of JavaScript and I poke a database. It's like, that really is a very small definition of full. But even within that context, I guess it's a point that it's just like the full stack, we tend to think of it as downwards. The full stack goes all the way out as well. Who's using the system? What is the environment? As a developer, what else do I need to know? Because a lot of the time it's not about just the technical stuff. That's an important ingredient. If you're going to build, unless you're dry stone walling, so I don't want to
software can't really work without software. Software can't work without software.
Yes, indeed. You need the software, and it's all of that. But it turns out that software is a socio-technical construct. It involves us. It involves what we saw and believed in the world that we then decided to quite literally codify. It's to do with our awareness, our limitations. When we talk about coding guidelines are not there for the machine. coding guidelines are not just there for you as an individual, they are actually a social negotiation. A software architecture is like a building architecture. It kind of indicates roles and places, and this is how we work. This is the flow through the architecture, and an architecture defines a workflow. Yeah. And so there is this idea that, crazy idea, but maybe people matter. So your skills need to go beyond just very much, knowing what is coming in forthcoming Java releases, and keeping track of all the proposals for Java extensions, and keeping track of all the flags that you can execute the JVM with. That's important, but then you've got to look out. Who else is there? What about community? That's one of the things that's kind of interesting with Java. It has a more structured community than many other programming languages kind of enjoy. The Java user group, the JUG model I go anywhere on the planet and I can speak at a local JUG and do a talk. Well, I go anywhere on the planet. No, I don't. I stay in Bristol for the last few months. But I imagine a time when I can do it. In the future, yeah. But also I've been able to speak at various JUGs online, and that because there is an infrastructure that's already set up. But there's an important idea there about community. So there's points here about knowing how to interview. So Tricia did that piece on interviewing, and she focuses on that because that is really important. That is, if you want, let's just say, I really want to do a particular kind of technical work. Well, that's great that you want that, but how are you going to get that? How are you going to get from here to there? Yeah. That thing's been advertised. What is the thing between you and that? Well, it's how you present yourself, and interviews are normally kind of a blind spot when it comes to for developers, both how to conduct them, but also how to give a good interview. Yeah. So honestly, I don't think you can ever get enough advice on that one. How to use the community. Perhaps if you're not comfortable with public speaking, but you would like to become comfortable with public speaking, or at least less horrified. For some people, it's such an obstacle. Then all of the stuff on, take advantage of your JUG. You can do community events, lightning talks, this kind of stuff. All of this stuff, and it will bring you in contact with people and points of view that perhaps you didn't know, and that will bring you in contact with the technical stuff. In other words, it's this idea that the full stack is not just downward, it is definitely upward. Your customer, your tests, it's not just this stuff. The tests may not be delivered in production, but they afford production. It's the scaffolding and gantry that holds the whole thing up. And again, why we care about containers and all these other things and these other skills, they're all the things around it. And it still fits the title. It's what every Java programmer should know. It's not just Java, JVM, and so on. No,
but it sounds like it's also for people who are not necessarily Java programmers, but also...
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of advice there that I think would easily translate elsewhere. And it's simply being conveyed here in the context of, hey, you want to become a better programmer and you've taken the Java route. Well, there's a bunch of other stuff you probably also should care about, or it would be helpful for you to know, rather than saying, here's a bunch of other stuff in another book, how to be a better interviewee or stuff like that. The problem is that sometimes we over separate things, we over specialize things. And that idea of being a rounded developer, if people should think of these things together, then separating them is not the way to encourage that. You put them in the same place. You say, hey, we're going to talk technical. This is a curly brackets piece, followed by a garbage collection piece, followed by, hey, use your community piece, followed by, and so on and so on. And there's actually, if you look at it closely, there's some that kind of blend into one another. There's no sharp boundaries. In some cases, you look at a piece and you go, is this really about Java the language, or is it more about Java the community or the practice? So it gently, sort of like a spectrum, it smoothly goes from one to the next.
Lovely. So I think my final question for you today is, if you had been allowed to say 98 things every Java programmer should know, would it be something about immutable data structures? What would it be?
That's a really interesting one. Again, the book was taken from what was given to us. Tricia and I went out and we hustled, we advertised, we contacted people that we knew, and sometimes it was, hey, would you like to contribute a piece? And likewise, the editor at O'Reilly, Zan McQuaid, she went out, here's somebody, yeah, we need some Android stuff. Here's somebody, or do we know any Kotlin people? Or could we have a counterpoint piece for something else? So sometimes we would hustle people just in general, just write a piece. Other times people would be aware of what we were doing and contact us and we go, yep, absolutely, here, contribute this. Sometimes we would target an individual. We'd say, you're known for this, or you write really well on this. We'd love a piece on this particular topic. And it'd be incredibly narrow. So basically what were the 98th? We had more submissions than were included in the book. We didn't hit 97 and said stop. We had 130 plus. And so therefore it was a case of like, okay, let's go through these. Yeah. Let's prioritize. We put a cutoff limit at not including any more than three submissions from anybody. That's something I did on the previous book, because otherwise it turns out contributions follow a kind of a skew law, almost a power law. You get some people contribute lots, and most people contribute one thing. And so therefore it becomes disproportionate. If you clip it at 3, then the participation goes up. It's one of those curious things about power laws. If you chop them off, then the number goes up. So we had 73 contributors in this book. Had we gone for the way that the other 97 Things books go for, we would have ended up in the 50s. Most of them have 50 plus, and typically have more than 3 contributions from certain people. The only other book with as many was this one, which I'm going to claim dibs on that I put the 3 on that. And by an amazing coincidence, this was not planned. There were 73 contributors for this book as well. But that was the idea. Wanted to get as broad a range of voices.
You wanted diversity.
Absolutely. And we got it, in the people and what they said. And that was really important. So what would the 98th thing have been? Well, there's maybe what I would want it to be, but actually it would have been one of the ones that Trisha and I ummed and ahed over, because there was a boundary where it's just like, are we going to include this? Are we not? There were some difficult ones. So probably it wouldn't have been anything that was, you mentioned something about immutable data structures. I would love a piece on that. I was tempted to write that. I did write a piece for the previous book, and I didn't include it because that was my 4th piece. I decided actually it was the weakest of the 4 I was submitting. So I thought, no, I'm going to exclude that. And I almost resurrected it for this book, but I thought, actually, I'm going to give other people a chance to do that. Perhaps other people have got better things to say about it. And immutability pops up in a couple of places, but we didn't end up with one piece that basically positioned itself and said, here is the center of the universe. Let's have an article just about this, rather than having it appear as a theme dotted through other pieces. So I would definitely have liked it. I've spoken about this. In fact, I finished a workshop today on refactoring to immutability. So I have a kind of particular kind of view on this.
You have enough for the next book then?
I guess we do. Yeah. I mean, who knows what that's going to be, but but the 98th piece would have simply been something that Trisha and I had ummed and ahed over and had a difficult time excluding. So it would just make it easy for us to include rather than being a specific topic.
Great. Are you going to make a new one, 97 Things?
I don't, well, I'm going to say, call me in 10 years,
Not right now.
Not right now. In fact, actually, if I'm strict about this, we finished collating this one in 2010, whereas the previous one I did was 2009, which is roughly a solar cycle. So the sun has an 11-year cycle. So perhaps 2031 would be the time to check back.
Okay.
But no, at the moment I don't have, although there are a couple of books I would like to, I've been thinking about doing or getting involved with. I'm going to leave the kind of 97 Things thing for a while, and then maybe one day I'll have exactly the same, what, we should do this. And I'll go back to O'Reilly and I will say something like that. But I would like to encourage other people, if you have a burning idea for this kind of thing, because I think it's actually quite a great form. It's quite a good format in the sense of you get that kind of idea of being able to dip in, explore that. There's a sort of value beyond. It's a slightly different value to a regular book. If you have a burning idea, then definitely go with it. 97 Things whatever should know. There's a lot of possibilities there.
Thank you for the encouragement, and thank you for playing along in this interview. I hope to see you someplace, sometime outside.
Somewhere in the planet.
Yeah.
perhaps with or without giraffes are optional.
Yes,
but yeah,
yes.
yeah, back in the real world.
And enjoy YOW online when you get there.
Yes, I will do. Right.
Bye-bye.